don't have time to cover all the information we have on this, but geologic column is based on circular reasoning. Circular reasoning is where you use the fossils to date the layers, then you turn around and use the layers to date the fossils. This is exactly how it's done. I'll show you from their own mouth here. Page 306 of Earth Science, Glencoe Biology textbook says you date the rocks by the fossils. On page 307, it tells the students to date the fossils by the rocks. The intelligent layman has long suspected circular reasoning and the use of rocks to date fossils and fossils to date rocks. The geologist has never bothered to think of a good reply. There is no good reply. They're arguing in a circle. I'll just take a few more here. By the way, radiometric dating is not possible without the geologic column. The evolutionists themselves understand that. Let's see, how about this one? The rocks do date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. It's based on circularity, folks. I'll show you that it's not correct. Petrified trees are frequently found standing up, and I'll show you some pictures of them here, so don't tell exactly what I'm saying here. Lobe-finned fish. We cover all this in great detail in video number, 1 minute? I went past it. Petrified trees standing up, running through multiple layers in the geologic column. I have been to many places where these trees are. Petrified trees standing up, running through multiple layers are proof positive. Those layers are not different ages. Past time? Okay.
This next question does go for you, we'll start with you, Dr. Hoven. You seem to be refuting single-step evolution. What do you have to say about cumulative evolution?
I would say there is no cumulative evolution. It takes place in the imagination. They would like to believe that it happens if you give it billions of years, but there's no proof that it's happened. If you ask an evolutionist, you know, if we really came about by gradual changes, why do we see no kinds of animals changing today? Would you please give me your best example of a transitional form alive today? Lots of animals are still having babies. I mean, let's see one today, okay? If they say, well, we don't live long enough to see this change, okay, well then let's see one in the fossil record. Archaeopteryx is a lousy example. First place, it's not a missing link, it's a bird. It's a 100% bird, a perching bird with toes, one toe goes backwards to grab the tree branches. I'll prove that if you'd like, if I get a minute. But absolutely 100% modern birds are found in rock layers that they date at 130 to 140 million years old, which is way before dinosaurs went extinct. So he said several times tonight that dinosaurs turned to birds, and I'm telling you folks, even by their geologic column, the birds were already here 130 million years ago. And I've got the evidence for that in a different presentation. It'll take me a minute to find that, but it didn't happen. There is no evidence whatsoever for this macroevolution. It only takes place, you have to imagine that it happened. And I'm sure we'll get a response like, well, we see these little changes, and if we had long enough time, time is the hero to the plot. And I'm telling you, it doesn't help, okay? Everything falls apart with time. It doesn't get better. Thank you.
Let me address a couple of the false statements that Dr. Hoven has just made. He said that Archaeopteryx was 100% bird. That's absolutely not true. Archaeopteryx has many characteristics of reptiles and not of birds. In fact, most of its skeletal properties are those of reptiles. Claws at the end of the arms or wings, teeth, bony tail. Find me a bird that has those, and then I'll admit that it's 100% bird. But until then, he says that dinosaurs couldn't have evolved into birds because the birds were there before the dinosaurs were gone. Well, so what? There were dinosaurs there 200 million years ago, and some of them evolved into birds 140 million years ago. Other dinosaurs were still there. So what? Let me use the rest of my time to just point out that the so-called circular argument about the geologic column is totally false. The geologic column was not based on fossils originally. It was not based on evolution. He may have managed to find some really bad textbooks to quote, but no scientist no geologist would tell you that the geologic column is based on evolution. It was there before evolution was even thought of.
Going back to starting with again, Professor Paulson, the question simply, how does evolution explain symbiotic relationships? And by that I take it that they're talking about relationships such as the honeybee and flowers that are utilized by the honeybee, totally different separate species.
I'll give an example. Again, I'm not an ecologist, so I don't know specific examples, but there is one example of an insect and a cactus, I think it is, that that are totally dependent on one another. The cactus needs the insect for pollination. The insect needs the cactus for food. And the argument of the creationists is, well, how could they have evolved? Because if you took either one away, they wouldn't they wouldn't be able to survive. But all you have to think about is that in the past, some point in the past, there may have been several insects that fed on that cactus, and several different plants on which that insect, several different insects that could pollinate that cactus, and several different plants on which that particular insect could survive. But with time, some of the other plants and insects died out. That cactus changed gradually so that it became more dependent on just that insect, and that insect became more dependent on just that plant. So there's no contradiction. In fact, those are good examples of how evolution can work.
Okay, I think this illustrates clearly what I said earlier. You have to imagine that evolution happened. It could have been, might have been. You know, go back and play the tape when you get it. That's all they have, folks, is speculation. All you have to do is imagine there might have been another insect. Of course, we don't have any proof of this. This is my point exactly. Evolution is a religion. You have to believe in these things. There's certainly no evidence for it. The fact is, we do have an enormous number of symbiotic relationships. Termites cannot digest cellulose. They can only chew it up and swallow it. The critters that live in their intestines digest the cellulose. Now, those little critters cannot live outside of the termite, and the termite cannot live without those critters, so which one evolved first, and how did it survive without the other one? You'd have to go through all sorts of imagination of how, well, it might have done a different purpose, might have something else. Okay, you can imagine all you want, but this is my point. You're outside of science at that point. And just because a person has really good science in some areas does not mean he doesn't frequently try to sneak his religious worldview in with his science. And that's what's happened. That's what happens in all the universities, and it's tragic, and somebody ought to put a stop to it. I'm working on it as hard as I can. And again, the hero to the plot was time, as if time is going to do it. How much time do I have left? We're leaving an awful lot of stuff hanging here, and I'd love to go back, and I've been accused of being a liar about 10 times tonight. I'd love to go back and get a specific example and stay on just one. But this article says, dinosaurs are alive as birds. USA Today, October, '99. Dinosaurs, they found a new missing link. National Geographic, new missing link, proof for evolution. A couple months later, oops, sorry, it's a fraud. This stuff happens all the time, okay? We can go through this at lunch if you like. Textbook says, dinosaurs turn to birds. There we go. Alan Fiducia, one of the world authorities on birds, said at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill,